Good evening, my darklings. You are in for a treat. Now, I am gone this week. I'm out filming the last two episodes of Paranormal Mysteries with Shane Pittman and Cindy Keza, which will come to Stream Beacon TV this fall. So make sure that you go subscribe to Stream Beacon TV and never miss a minute of the best in paranormal TV programming. They've got a large lineup of horror, true crime, and paranormal programs there, and they'd love for you to sign up. Our show begins airing mid-September through October, and I hope that you will enjoy them. We are putting our heart and soul into these because we've heard you, the audience, wanting more. Speaking of wanting more, I had a chance to record with a friend of mine a few weeks back for my Paranormal 360 radio show, and I videotape each one like I do here. She had such a great story to tell, and we barely scratched the surface. I asked her if she'd come back and visit with us. So she's going to be here this Wednesday on the program to talk about her creature, ghost, alien encounters, and abduction. So you'll want to tune in for that. But I wanted to introduce you to Jessica Blunt and give you a chance to see the episode, hear the very first episode we did together. So I hope that you'll sit back, relax, and enjoy. This is a special episode of the Paranormal 60.
I'm not gonna stand here and listen to this baloney. You won't know. He doesn't stand for baloney.
Sounds like a lot of supernatural baloney to me.
Supernatural, perhaps. Baloney, perhaps not.
Happens when a woman is called, not by phone, but by fate. A voice from beyond the veil. A force near the infamous Skinwalker Ranch that shifted her soul. Tonight, we meet Jessica Blunt. She's not just a channeler. She's a healer, a messenger, and the living bridge between our world and something far stranger. Her story has captivated scientists, confounded skeptics, and inspired those searching for meaning in the mysteries. What does it mean to be chosen? And what truths are waiting just beyond the veil? Find out tonight, right here on the Paranormal 360 with me, Dave Schrader. And joining me now on the John Schuster Coldwell Banker Hotline is our guest, Jessica Blunt. Jessica, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Dave, for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, we've had an opportunity to work alongside one another at a few conventions and have spoken, but have never had a chance to have you on one of my shows. So I'm so pleased we were able to finally connect to do this.
Yeah, that's awesome. I am so grateful to be here, and it's been an interesting ride. So I'm excited to talk to you about some of the things that you may not know about me.
All right. Well, that's what we're going to dig into tonight. And especially, I love that there's so many different layers to this. We hear about people that have these awakenings, and it just kind of awakens one aspect of a new dynamic in their life. Yeah. I think it often opens up a lot more, but people don't pay as close attention. They just focus on what seems to be the most prevalent of those things. Growing up, where did you spend most of your life?
So I spent most of my life in California. And I've always had this really deep connection with the paranormal and the other side. And I didn't ever realize that until my parents shared that with me, that they would find strange things stacked in places that I have no business reaching, or, it's just me. It was just me. So there are things hidden under huge chests that nobody could lift. And so the paranormal has always had a little bit of a close connection with me. And it's just been one of those fun little topics that you get to have with friends.
Seems like a little bit more than just a little bit, Jessica. You might be underplaying what's been going on in your life. When you say things would appear under heavy chests that nobody could lift on their own,
yeah.
How were they getting there? Was this poltergeist activity? Was this Jessica phasing things through? How do you explain this?
That's a good question. My stepfather actually shared that with me last year. He said, I was about 4 at the time. So he goes, "Do you even remember that?" And I said, "Absolutely not." He says, "Yeah, there was one time that we had bought you brand new shoes and we could not find them anywhere. And we searched the entire house. It was just my two parents and myself. And about a year later, they were doing some remodeling, and they moved this big chest and found them perched right under this big chest, and they had no explanation. There's no room to get them to like slide, or it was literally inside this chest. It was crazy.
Were they shoes that maybe young Jessica Blunt did not want to wear?
Possibly. It is.
Okay.
It is a possible fashion trend faux pas. But
man, I could have used you as a friend when my mom was putting me into brown corduroys and orange turtlenecks. Where were you helping me hide things inside walls and underneath heavy furniture?
Yeah.
So that's always been a part of it. Now, as you've aged and talked to your parents, have they ever come forth with, especially your bloodline, that there has been abilities and high strangeness in your family?
They hadn't, but I remember as a teenager that I feel like it's just a great show, or a great title for a show. The House on Mary Lane feels like a good title for a scary horror movie. And that house in California, it truly was wild. There was one night I remember having my friends over, and my mom was in the other room watching TV. And we were just, teenagers and in my bedroom doing teenager stuff. And I hear my mom yell for us. And we ran out. She's laying there and her eyes are wide open. And she looks over and she said, they used to have these little oil machine, or these little oil pieces that would sit on top of a light bulb. And it had lifted up. It was an air freshener. It had lifted up over the lamp, and it had moved over past the lampshade and had set down on the book at the end of where she was laying down. It didn't spill, didn't knock anything over, didn't knock over the lampshade. And she watched that with her eyes come up and over and set down. And that house had so many layers, with the voices that my friends and I would hear in the other room, to the heavy windows and doors opening on their own. It was just wild.
Did it ever feel threatening at all, or just
no? No, it never felt threatening. It was just so interesting because it was something that I grew up with, and my family, we would be surprised. But we just we spent about 18 months in that house before eventually it got to be too much and we had to pack on into there. Yeah.
Do you think that growing up, or at least spending some time in a place that's that saturated with energy, does that open people up that may have innate abilities, or is it the chicken and the egg thing where your innate abilities might have been what helped open that location up?
That's a great perspective. I think that having the opportunity to be in a place like that certainly gives you an opportunity to decide for yourself if you want to open up more. And I believe the more that you expand your awareness or the desire to understand more, the more it's going to resonate with you. Mm-hmm. But there were a lot of friends that took off as quick as they had those experiences and wouldn't come back because they were quite afraid. So they closed off. They didn't want to know anymore.
But it'd be interesting to know, going back, what was the scent that the ghost did not like?
Yes.
Was it a sage? Was it something that we would normally use now to try to help clear a location? Was the ghost like, oh, no, I'll just put this over here?
Knowing my mom, it probably was some kind of one. It probably would have started the house on fire, knowing the time frame that we were in. They don't make those anymore. The lamp oil fragrance. But it probably was not a pleasing a scent, cucumber melon or something fruity.
It's fun. Do you believe that, kind of before we go to break, it's just kind of a fun little question. Do you believe that the spirit realm, can they smell? Can they feel a tactile sense? Obviously, they seem to be able to hear and see, but do they still have other senses available to them?
That's a great question to think about. I might have to ponder that and ask my next connection that opens up to me. I'll have to ask my spirits next time I speak with them.
Well, we have a commercial break coming up, Jessica. Feel free to plug in while we're doing that, and we'll see what you find out. Jessica Blunt, our guest this evening, as we talk about her life, her encounters, and it goes far beyond just abilities and ghostly activity. We talked in the opening about something that occurred near the Skinwalker Ranch in Vernal, Utah. Let's talk a little bit about that. Reintroduce for people that might not even be familiar with what a Skinwalker Ranch is. Some people are still living in caves, Jessica, and are unfamiliar with that program. So we'll discuss that and so much more. Stay tuned. You're listening to the very best in paranormal talk radio. This is the Paranormal 360. All right, Jessica Blunt, walk me through this moment with the Skinwalker Ranch and what happened to you. How long ago did this take place?
So this was in 2019.
Okay. So still pretty recent.
Yes, very, very recent, and still feels very much like yesterday. It was a beautiful day. It was in April. So, very, very similar to the beautiful weather that we experience now. It was blue sky. There was a few wispy clouds, but nothing, that would infer any kind of big weather.
Right.
You could certainly see the clarity of the planes passing by, and you could see, it was just a beautiful Sunday. And we were actually driving to go to the movie theater. We were going to watch Endgame, and with our children.
How appropriate.
I know, it's ironic. So we ended up driving from where we live in the Uinta Basin to Vernal, which is about 30 miles away. Vernal, Utah is, another little small town that has a theater, has the 3D theater, and we were really wanting to go there. We had two separate cars that we were in because my husband was going to do something else after. We got to Vernal and realized that the movie was sold out. So we had to go to the next town, which was kind of zigzagging back through the Uinta Basin. And just outside of Vernal, there are some switchbacks. And so we were making our way quickly to get to the next town, which is Roosevelt. And Roosevelt had another showing. And so we were headed over there. And as we were driving, my boys, in the back seat with their game and watching YouTube, probably you. I mean, I would imagine it was yours now that
I like the sound of that. Yeah.
Recalling the story. And we were heading outside of the switchbacks. And after a couple of minutes of just observing the scenery and it was beautiful, but something flashed in the sky that drew my attention off to it was about south. So we were facing south as we were driving through these switchbacks, and I watched for just a moment to see if I could catch whatever it was, this flash that kind of drew my eye to that blue part of the sky. And so driving, kids, it's a lot happening at once.
Right.
And suddenly I see another flash and my eyes are in that same direction now. So at this point, I'm watching for about a minute, 3 huge spheres of light that are now in frame, and they are moving in this way that doesn't register with me. So I'm flipping the file in my head. I never ever have I ever used the term UFO or UAP or anything like that prior. As anomalous as my life has been with the paranormal, that was a different category. And I was not activating that in that file flipping. And so it was plane, drone, helicopter, plane, drone, helicopter. And in the meantime, nothing was clicking as I was trying to watch these 3 spheres that were doing this. It was leapfrog maneuver. It was the craziest thing I have literally ever seen. And so they moved over one another, and it was a sense of playfulness. It was a sense of nobody knows we're here, so we can kind of do whatever we want,
Right.
kind of thing. It was the weirdest thing that I would even infer that. But it takes about 3.5, 4 minutes to get through those switchbacks. So as we're twisting and turning, and after about a minute watching that, there's nowhere to pull over. You've got people behind you, you've got people in front of you. There's nowhere to pull off to the side. And I finally kind of get my wits about me after watching it, and ask my boys to turn on a video, and so that I could try to record something. So we get out of the switchbacks, and as we pull out of the switchbacks, we start turning towards the west. And at this point, I have to face the west to drive, obviously, but I have to look now to the south out my window so that I can still keep an eye on them. And at this point, I knew in some way, I became aware that they were aware that I knew they were there. If that makes sense.
So they knew that you knew that they knew that you knew that they were there. I'm with you. I follow you.
Yes. Which is not something that, again, I would never come up with something like that. Why would I know that something that is this out there would ever, have this connection to me to even make that assumption? So at this point, they're tucked behind a cloud, this little wispy cloud. They have not come out. There's no more leapfrog happening. And I'm trying to explain to my boys at this point, I found a place to pull over, and I'm trying to explain to them what I'm seeing. And the only thing that can come out is there's something that's clear and it's flying in the sky. And they're like, what are you talking about? How do you see it if it's clear? Which is valid.
Very valid. Yeah.
And I said, well, but because what I was actually seeing is something that looked like a bubble, right? A bubble is clear, but it has some
shimmery effect to it that gives
Yes.
you a visual representation, right?
Correct. And that is what I was seeing. So it had this glow about it on the inside, which was the flash, that when this flash would come on, this light, this inner light, that was this glow, you could see that there was this bubble-like effect around it that was bigger. But they were not coming out of that cloud. They were not coming out. So I tried to record. I'm trying to explain. I'm stuttering over my words. I could not articulate what was going on in my brain because I was in a very, I mean, I'm sure it was a state of shock. It's daytime. It's 4:00 in the afternoon in April. So it's not dark. I'm not seeing anything that could be something else. So I'm recording. My boys they're trying to be supportive and say, yes, I see it. It is that. And I said, no, that's a plane. And they're like, okay, so it's not black. And I said, no, it is not black. It is clear. And so, you've got a 7 and a 9-year-old that
Right.
I can't get them on board.
Well, mom's brain is breaking looking at this, which
Yes.
I say that, and I don't mean to sound dismissive, because I've been in your situation where I've witnessed something so extraordinary that your brain just like fizzles. You see it, you're seeing it,
Yes.
but you don't have a way to process it or compartmentalize it in a way that makes sense to the world that we're familiar with. So to try to
Yes.
explain something that we don't even know what we're looking at to children, I feel you in that. We have to take another break. We'll come back. What happens next to Jessica Blunt? What does this sighting mean? And what kind of awakening? We'll find out next on the Paranormal 360. All right, Jessica, people want to know. You see these things in the sky. They're moving around. They suddenly become aware of your awareness. Now, I know that there are listeners right now scratching their heads going, that's convenient. However, I will tell you that I've been to many UFO sighting spots.
Mhm.
And once I have witnessed something in the sky, they do seem to take notice and do something for you, as though they're aware you now know that you're watching. And I've
Yep.
talked to people like James Gilliland from the Assetti Ranch in Trout Lake, Washington. And folks, I encourage you, check out eceti.org, eceti.org. Read about it. Some of it's very weird, but I've been there. I've seen things in the sky that I cannot explain. So I just want people to understand, I'm with you on this, Jessica. I understand this. And as weird as it sounds to everybody else who's never had an experience like this, the processing of what is taking place is crazy. And the fact that every one of these people that I've been to that have hosted me to see these Skywatch events have told me the same thing. Once they know you're watching, they will make contact or they will show themselves to you. And that's been the way it has been for me for 19 years now. I've seen more in the sky because I'm looking, and they seem to allow me to see some of these things. So I'm with you.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I agree.
Now I got to. What's the next step for you? I mean,
Okay.
nothing is showing up that you can show anybody. The kids are probably texting Dad, we need you to pick us up.
Yeah.
We're going to miss this movie. Mom's insane.
Yeah.
What's going on?
So at this point, I am I'm really close. I'm realizing that I'm really close to Skinwalker Ranch. Now, I didn't know at the time. So I didn't know at the time I was this close to Skinwalker Ranch. I didn't know where Skinwalker Ranch was. Living here, we had heard about it, but not really. Like, we weren't going out, certainly like how people are now. Nobody's,
Right.
Going out to the stop sign and trying to find it. Like, nobody's doing that. But I watched for a little bit longer. We watched these lights. After a couple of minutes, we started to see that some planes were flying through that cloud that started to fizzle, like it was fizzling out. So at this point, there's no more hiding. Now, granted, these lights were able to turn on and off, but it seemed as though they were wanting to mimic some other craft in order to get out of there.
Right.
And so we watched a plane fly through this cloud, and it had the contrail. It kind of did the plane thing. And right after that, we saw another weird looking contrail, but it was skipping through the sky. There was no plane in front of it. There was nothing with it. And it was just kind of this put of a line. And
smoke. Yeah.
Yes. And we
Now,
thought,
at this point, are your boys seeing this with you, Jessica?
they are now seeing that.
Good. Okay.
Because they are trying to see what I'm seeing. And I said, I think I'm able to, like, I'm watching with my eyes. I'm not necessarily watching with my phone camera. And then I see the glimpse. That thing moved through the sky, and I got it disappearing right over Skinwalker Ranch. It disappeared right over. I watched it turn on. I saw the one, and then there was the other one that came skipping through, and then they disappeared right over Skinwalker Ranch. Again, I didn't know that at the time, but now going back and looking through a lot of evidence that I had collected, I could see exactly where I was parked, and I can see exactly where the ranch is. I can see exactly where it vanished.
Now, for people, again, that are not familiar, let me mention Skinwalker Ranch in Utah has been something that is not just flight of fancy, some crazy old rancher who sees things at night. This has been owned by parts of our government, by research groups, by NIDS, and Robert Bigelow. They have bought this property to study the phenomena that is taking place, from visionary versions of portals opening to strange cryptid creatures, large wolf-like beings that have been shot at that do not fall, to lights in the sky, almost like an umbrella effect over parts of the property as well, where light will stop or things will the magnetic signatures of the ground and air do not match up. It's a very strange location.
Yeah.
And there's a myriad of different things that take place. I'm excited. I'm going to be back out at Phenomicon where you and I met.
Nice.
I'm going to be
Yes.
out there this year with Dr. Maria Mayer. We're going to be going over to Sky Wolf Ranch, which is directly next to
Yes.
Skinwalker Ranch.
I love that.
And
I'm
we're
so
going to be
excited
taking
for
out
you.
a bunch of guests to go out and investigate with us for a few hours.
Nice.
So if you're close by, sneak on over, Jessica. I'll
I
hide you
sure
under my
will.
coat.
Yes.
And we'll go in there.
I'd love to.
But so for listeners, now you kind of have an idea. If you haven't seen more about Skinwalker Ranch, go look it up.
Mhm.
People say Skinwalker. I don't know. I'm afraid I'm going to find a bunch of websites I
Yeah.
shouldn't find looking
Yeah.
that up. But there's
Right.
TV series, there's specials. Go check it out.
There's books.
All right.
There's all kinds of things. Yes.
So now that you've seen this and they've gone, they've
Yeah.
left the sky.
Yeah. Yep.
What's going on in the brain of you?
Oh
and your
yeah. So
children?
now comes the fun part, and I say that as it. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
being
sarcastic.
super
Sure, I gotcha.
facetious. Yeah, for sure. So we we leave the vicinity because yes, it's all about the movie for my kids. And so we get to the movie theater and I am sounding the alarm for everybody in town. I am blasting it. I'm sitting in the movie theater and I'm trying to tell everybody, go outside. There's something outside, go outside. And I'm shaking. I could feel adrenaline in my body just taking over, but I'm starting to have a hard time talking. And I end up the end of the movie, we get home. I am almost in a convulsive state. I am stuttering my words. I am unable to even formulate what I'm trying to say. And I'm thinking, this has got to be shock. It's got to be shock. This is
Right.
the first time you're seeing something strange in the sky. It's had a profound effect on you. You're excited. You're freaking out, all the things, right? So I go and lay down and try to take care of myself. And for the next several days, I had developed a severe tremor and I couldn't speak. I also couldn't get my words out. I was trying to
Right.
get, speak. And it was severe. It was traumatizing. This was the most traumatic thing I think my body and my brain has ever gone through. And I had to make a doctor's appointment, and that began the long road of something I never imagined coming. I never imagined coming with both my physical self and my neurological self. It was an interesting discovery that they had given me.
Just before we go to break, we have a few seconds left. Were the kids affected the same way?
The kids were not affected because they were
Okay.
not able to see what I saw.
Gotcha.
Officially, they were not able to see what I saw. So they were not affected, thankfully.
All right. We've set the table for you, folks. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back. How does this play out? What mysteries unfold for Jessica? And again, chicken or the egg? Did these things cause this effect? Did they awaken her? Or was it because of an awakening that she saw it? This is your home for the very best in paranormal talk radio. This is the Paranormal 360. I'm Dave Schrader. Jessica Blunt, my guest this evening, and she will be here with us next hour as well. This hour setting up kind of the idea of where she came from, the experiences she had, this profound effect from witnessing things in the sky over Utah, and how it physically and mentally, spiritually impacted her. Next hour, we'll talk about what this means going forward and what type of things have happened to her since. So let's rejoin with our guest, Jessica. You're going through these medical issues that make no sense.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people that are listening might think, and there was a movie called Phenomenon with John Travolta, where John Travolta went out and one night saw these lights in the sky and collapsed. and suddenly his brain is engaged in a way that he was always kind of a slower individual, and now he's hyper intelligent, can absorb things. It radically changed him. And spoiler alert, I mean, the movie's been out 30 years, so I don't think, watch it. It's a phenomenal movie, folks. But you find out that there's a brain malady that he's dealing with. And many people have talked about now having the ability to see and experience things. And a lot of people we find also deal with a form of epilepsy. Yeah. So is it a medical condition that makes you think or hallucinate that you're having these experiences? Or is it something else that's awakened that also happens to kind of walk parallel lines with medical conditions? What's your story, Jessica?
So after my sighting, my initial experience, and the fact that I was convulsing so badly, the severity of being able to not do my job. I couldn't do anything at that point. So my doctor got me in right away, and he was shocked at what he saw, because he knows me to be, pretty healthy. I'm active, and it was very uncharacteristic. He ran an MRI. He said, it looks like you have sudden onset Parkinson's disease. And he has that in my file as sudden onset Parkinson's. And I said, is that a thing? And he goes, no, it's not. You don't just suddenly have Parkinson's. It develops over time.
Right.
But the tremors that I had were so severe, and the fact that I couldn't talk, I was stuttering as bad as I was. They were worried that perhaps that maybe I had a tumor. So he sent me down immediately for an MRI. They did blood work, and this is where things become again very interesting and starts this medical journey. But I go down for the MRI, and I change into the robe, and I'm walking in to, I walk up to the MRI room, right? It's highly magnetic. I walk up to the doorway, and I hear in stereo, in my head, stereo, they will never find it. And I turn around because I thought maybe somebody was, I was in a hospital. Maybe somebody was talking, something medical about a diagnosis that they had just discovered, and nobody was near me. Nobody was around me. So I just didn't think much of it. And I went to step through the doorway again, but this time, and this was the first of 3 times that this has occurred, but I heard again, he said my name this time and said, Jessica, they will never find it. And I stepped through the doorway, and I looked at the technician, and I said, what do you mean? And he spoke, and it was very clear it wasn't him. And I had asked, who's telling me that they can't find anything? And he goes, I don't, he was very confused to kind of summarize it.
Sure.
I went through, I had the MRI. It was great. The MRI, there was no abnormalities. And when I left, though, I left, and I was able to walk out on my own accord without having any kind of support. I wasn't shaking. I didn't have any tremors, and I was able to call my husband. And that was the first time, because I was talking to him, that I realized I was able to talk without stuttering, while I was still, there's still pause. And this still occurs with me now, but there's still pause because I have to still grab onto that word. But that led me to discovering that I had a neurological injury of sorts that is anomalous. And that I also have a few weeks later, my blood work came back, and that I have an autoimmune disease that's an elevated inflammatory marker that they can't identify what's caused it, where it came from. I didn't have it before. I have it now.
Mm.
And so all of these things together culminated into a very anomalous medical condition, of which I come to meet Dr. Jim Segala, Dr. Kit Green, Dr. Gary Nolan, who have taken interest in my case because of the injuries that I have sustained. And after learning for many years and studying a lot of, after they have studied me for many years, rather, the brain part of it, the neurological injury part of it, essentially opened me up to receive like all of the information that I could ever possibly need about existence at once. And that's how it felt, is that, hey, we see you. We know that you see us in the clouds. By the way, this is what's happening. We're going to give you all of this information about existence and everything that goes along with it. And in exchange, you are now our messenger.
So they almost they poured in 22 gigabytes of information into your 36-bit RAM memory, right? And that's kind of what overloaded and fried the circuits. It's interesting too that after the MRI you were better. It makes me wonder, did the magnetic resonance have an effect on whatever was implanted or imparted on you,
right,
to dampen the overwhelming effect?
Right.
We are at the top of the hour, folks. There's a lot more of this story to be told. What's it like to have this realization, to know that you're not crazy because you have doctors, physicians, psychologists looking into your case and realizing that there is something different? We'll talk about that next, right here on the Paranormal 360. Welcome back. In hour one, we heard how a life-altering experience near Skinwalker Ranch in Vernal, Utah, opened the door to something otherworldly for Jessica Blunt, our guest. But there's more to this story. From quantum healing and elemental wisdom to messages carried across dimensions, Jessica isn't just witnessing the phenomenon. She is the phenomenon. Hour two takes us even deeper into the unknown. This is the Paranormal 360 with me, Dave Schrader, and joining me on the John Schuster Coldwell Banker Hotline, our guest, Jessica Blunt. All right, Jessica, I'm glad everybody had about 5 minutes there to clear their mind, take in what's been shared. And I know there's skepticism, right? I've talked to people about this, and listening to your story and having seen you at these events is one of those things where it's like talking to you and having this conversation, now having it more one-on-one. There's just this sense about you. I don't feel it's a glorified money grab experience, which, trust me, having done this field for 20 years, I've met my fair share of people that are in that situation. It's very powerful. There's something about you that resonates. I had people talking and asking me about you at conferences. Who's that woman over there? And it wasn't just because you're an attractive woman. I had men, women, everybody. What is she here? There's something different. I know I'm going to sound crazy, but there's like a weird light with her. And I'm like, I don't know. I barely know her. I've just heard what you guys heard. Or before the talks that you did, we knew nothing going in. So I really love that element of you, that there's a sincerity and empathy and compassion to even people who are skeptical towards your journey and what you've seen, done, and experienced. And in hour one, we talked about that awakening.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, real quick, knowing now what you know, do you ever have those days where you wish you hadn't looked to the sky? You hadn't stopped the car?
Yeah, and thank you for your kind words. It means a lot. It's an emotional thing for me to talk about this story, because it is my life and it's not something that I was looking for. I'm an educator. I am a mom. I am not out, doing investigations all the time. And so,
right. This is not the thing that defines Jessica
No.
Blunt. This is just an element of who you are.
Yeah. And now the last, I had to learn for many years how to live with this and how to even validate any of the experiences that I had gone through and continue to go through, because it wasn't a one-time thing, Dave. This prompted me to see these things in the sky every single day. And I'm not talking about, I wonder if it's a star at nighttime. These are daytime sightings. And I would be with my students. We would be outside playing, and I would see them. I would point them out. They would see them. And I would ask them, what is it? And they would, oh, it's a star. I'm like, it's noon. It's not a star. You know, and so it's a UFO. Okay. And then they just go about playing. Like there's no, it's been so unbelievable for me over the last few years to really look at this and understand why more people don't see that it's obvious, and yet they don't want to see. They don't want to look up. So a part of me, because of how much it changed my life and how much I had to go through, and it was, the first couple of years was not easy. You know, when we talk about this awakening, I was not necessarily a religious person as I was, you know, seeking some kind of, you know, I didn't grow up in religion. I have studied other different kinds of religion, but I choose to be very spiritual. But this prompted a very deep awakening within me, because not only did I see these things, but now I am seeing lots of things, and I'm able to connect with these multidimensional beings. And there are, you know, ancestral energies there. I asked them too. I said, what are you? Because people are going to ask me, and I've heard of ghosts, and I've had these things. You guys aren't anything trying to, you know, you're not new here, but maybe you are, I don't know. And so what are you? You know, the they, because I get that question, what are they? And why are they here? And I got a great answer, and it was,
let's hear it.
If you want, I can share it.
Yes. What are they? Why are they here, Jessica?
So, you know, because that's literally what I asked. I'm, you know, the question everybody wants to know. And so they are multidimensional beings. They can travel through this quantum field, and all of this stuff I had no prior knowledge of. This is not I was a math teacher, but I was not a physicist, you know. Right. I'm not a quantum mechanics. I'm not a Travis Taylor, you know. Right. So I said, all right, tell me what you are. And they said, we are just like you. You exist in a dimension. We exist in another dimension. There are infinite dimensions that are layered upon one another. And every so often, when you get that flicker, it kind of goes from this vertical dimension, and they open up. These doorways can kind of open up sideways like a door, right? And something can travel through. And so there's, you know, we are created from energy. Energy doesn't die. And they showed me literally this process of creation and how everything's connected, how we never die. Everything's consciousness, and our subconsciousness exists in everything. So every dimension, and again, those are things I didn't ever believe in before. So when they showed me all of this, I was quite surprised, to say the least. And they're not necessarily here for anything profound that we think that they are. Like suddenly now we're all aware. No, now we're all actually looking, and we're becoming more aware, and we're choosing to become open. And so we're starting to see more of these other dimensional beings, because we're paying attention, right? They're allowing us to see, because we're in a place that we are now prepared for what we are seeing, right? So energy doesn't die, and so we exist through this body that we live in, and you know, just like there's left and right and up and down and black and white, there's always an opposite. So that when the body physically dies, then that energy that we have created throughout light that has run us, that has been this cellular thing within us, that knows exactly what to do upon the physical death that we will experience, that we all will experience. We shift our consciousness into the subconsciousness, where we go back into continuing on beyond in another dimension. But we're done with this one. So they are just us in this space.
Interesting. For those of you paying attention, hearing what she just said, it tells you that there are not just subsects of things that exist. Bigfoot, aliens, ghosts, they're not all independent. These things are tied together. Each one of them is one part of a giant tapestry. We'll continue to tap into that. We'll talk more with our guest, Jessica Blunt. And if you have questions and more interest in Jessica, when we come back, I'll let you know how you can connect with her as well. All right, Jessica, there are a lot of people out there that may be awakening or having experiences or medical issues that they can't understand. Are you available? Do you have a website people can go to learn more about your journey, learn more about you, and maybe get some answers for themselves?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I've compiled a lot of the different things that I do just on one website, jessicablunt.com. I also would love to offer those that may be experiencing anything paranormal, anything that might be going on in the sky, anything going on in their home. I work with Dr. Segala, and he has created a device called the MUPAS device, the Modular Unidentifiable Phenomenal Alert System. This device we were a part of.
You should have an award just for having been able to say all of that, but go ahead.
Remembering that acronym, yes. And it is linked into my website as well. And so the first 3 years of this, from 2019 to 2022, Dr. Segala collected a lot of data from our home because of how often I was having experiences. My family has since had a lot of their own experiences as well as sightings. And they wanted to see if there was any quantifiable data that they could collect from that. And that is now available as we are in our second phase of the study for anybody to become a part of. So I have that linked into my website, that if anybody is feeling like they're struggling with awakening, struggling with paranormal, struggling with anything, that they just need additional support, please find me online, jessicablunt.com, and I am happy to assist you where I can.
We'll have a link for jessicablunt.com on today's program guide. So for those of you listening to the podcast version, please do so and check that. For those of you that may not even be familiar with that, you're listening to me live on the radio right now. If you've missed any part of tonight's show or would like to catch up on the very best in paranormal talk radio, you can go check out the Paranormal 360, Paranormal 360, wherever you listen to your very favorite podcasts, and you'll hear the last year's worth of shows since we launched. All right, Jessica, you've opened the door to people now that have an interest in getting some answers and a place to go, jessicablunt.com. And that's phenomenal. I want to dig a little bit more deeply into your story, because tonight's going to get past us fast.
Yes.
Obviously, this is just the opening of the door. We'll have to have you back in to discuss more of this and in different ways as we go forward. But now that you've got this, you've got the attention of science who's taking you seriously. That has to be remarkable in itself, that they listen, that they didn't mock you, they didn't dismiss you, they didn't call you crazy or that you have a brain anomaly issue, but that they're looking at this thing. What was that like to get that kind of corroboration and collaboration from the science field?
Absolutely. It still is emotional for me to have that validation. Through this injury and through these sightings, I had been invited out to Skinwalker Ranch, and when they were filming for season 1. And that's how I met Dr. Segala, as I mentioned. And we partnered together. And through those different discussions through his partners that he works with, it is almost surreal to have experienced something like this and continue to and have these big names that are in this fringe science say, yes, that's we don't know. We don't know why she has this, and we have studied it. We've looked at her history. We've looked at her blood work. We've looked at all the things. I, poked and prodded, and we can say a lot of the things that we know that they're not what it's not. But in addition to these injuries, I have had 3 occasions where I've had radiation burns due to some connections through my channeling of these beings, these multidimensional beings. And once we get to that point, occasionally I use quotations when I say injured, because the radiation I don't feel is intentional. The way that I have been injured and burned, it's almost as though it's a byproduct. I kind of think of it as the exhaust from a car. You're standing next to a car, you're going to have the exhaust. If it's on, it's going to take off and you're going to have some of it come at you. Yeah.
We've even noticed in the field of paranormal investigations, where it comes to ghosts, that sometimes there is trace radioactive elements to it. People that have encountered things and have gotten very ill. Some people, our good friend Chris Fleming, who is a medium and a psychic, has developed a very rare form of cancer from massive exposure to radiation. And he is a guy who has been channeling and working with the other side and spirits. As a matter of fact, after the show, I'm going to connect you with him, because I think maybe you can help find answers, and the good doctors you work with maybe can help him move forward with this. But that I know so many people that are in this field. And I was thinking that if you're channeling, and for people that don't understand that means like an energy moves through you or speaks through you, allows you to write using their hand, if you will. So there is an exchange of energy. And if it's slightly altered or different dimensional energy, it seems to me that it would make sense that there would be byproduct of that may not be copacetic with our physicality.
Absolutely. I've always felt that way. Even though I had these injuries, I had people say, well, you got a couple of those you had when you were at Skinwalker, a couple of them you had when you were at home, it's dark. And I said, it is never presented to me that way. In fact, my automatic writing, I had done one time an automatic writing that I did not see coming. That'll have to be for another time, Dave. But it is a profound experience to become somebody else and to not see it coming. That was the first time.
Do me a favor, Jessica. If you have Max, the streaming service, or Discovery Plus, go watch the documentary, The Curse of Lizzie Borden.
Okay.
It's Chris Fleming and myself, along with Sam Beltrusis. And I have this spontaneous channeling session that I did not expect coming. And that profoundly affected me in a way. I thought it was Chris. We were all holding hands during a seance, and my arm started jerking. I thought it was him because he was kind of convulsing. And when he let go of my hand, and my hand was one moving, we'll talk about that and talk about the channeling in a deeper element going forward. But it's The Curse of Lizzie Borden. For any of the listeners, go watch it. Not only are we confronted with the paranormal and trying to get answers for Lizzie Borden and for her family and history, it had some weird effect on me. All right. So we've got about a minute before we have to go to break here. So you've had quite a bit that's happened to you. I want to know, when we come back, how do you go from being kind of I don't want to say passive bystander, somebody who's obviously having experiences doesn't make you passive, but becoming more involved with allowing things in you, through you, and making this communication. You talked earlier about just hearing voices in your head, which a lot of people will say is, well, Dave, she's schizophrenic. Has mental issues. I want you to know, and this exists. There is technology that exists now. When the TV show Paranormal State came out, you could go stand in front of this billboard in New York. There were no speakers, but if you stood in the right place, you could hear the ad for it, and it was beamed directly into your head. We'll be back with more after this. Yeah, science is weird. Science is fun. And like I said, leaving the last break, things like the ability to communicate to you through your own head exist. So hearing those voices doesn't necessarily mean we're psychotic. I mean, in my case, it is definitely psychosis, but it's not schizophrenia. There are these opportunities. And if we have been working hand in hand with aliens, interdimensional beings, multidimensional, universal creatures of light, whatever we want to term them, that might be a technology we have. We already know that we have infrasound weaponry.
Yes. Which
can be focused, pinpoint accurate to people and cause all kinds of mental disturbances. So just keep that in mind, folks. Again, when some of this sounds so far out there, so Twilight Zone, you'd be amazed at how much of it is reality. You know, I got to remember, folks, we have flip phones when they came out because of Star Trek, because there were engineers that wanted to put a communicator in our hand, and they love the flip quality. So those things that once seemed fantastical became real, from science fiction to science fact. So read up on these things before you poo-poo them. And I know some of you just like to read the quick little meme headlines on social media. Let me let you in on a secret. There's more to the story. Jessica Blunt, our guest, time is flying on us. So how is it that you go from being somebody who's having these experiences, witnessing it, to becoming a channel, becoming a conduit for these energies to communicate through you?
So it was almost, I didn't really have a choice. There was a lot of times that I would be doing my job, I would be teaching, and I'm, talking about things to my students, and I'm getting a message, right? And the message is showing in my mind. It's playing like a film, and it's over and over and over and over again. A lot of times it had to do with somebody near Skinwalker. It seemed very drawn to that particular place, Skinwalker Ranch. And it would repeat, it would get louder and louder until I finally did something. And it would have to be either I had to pass along a message because somebody was going to get hurt, or if somebody went and did that, it was very much a message for somebody else. And so there was a time that, so I did film for a season at Skinwalker Ranch. And while I was there, I happened to be sitting on a ledge there. And I happened to throw my shoes off because I found that every time I was at that piece of land, I was led somewhere. So I would take my shoes off, and I had found caves. I had found different markers to place phenomena, or to capture certain phenomena rather. There was a lot of different things that I was being led to discover. And I happened to be sitting on on the mesa, and I was sitting there, and I closed my eyes, and I heard that deep male voice come back to me. And I said, "What do you want? Like, what do you want?" I saw these eyes, these black eyes, get right in my face. And he said, "What do you want? Why are you here?" And I said, "I just want to know the truth. I'm very biased. I am zero judgmental. I don't know anything about what goes on this property. I don't know anybody here. Or anything. I just want to know why we exist. What is going on?" Right? So he goes, and so I remember him saying, "Are you sure you want to know?" And I said, "Yeah, I want to know." So I remember sitting there, and my arm lifts up, and he says, "Take my hand." And my arm lifts up into the sky. I remember feeling that, but it felt as though something was holding it. And then he placed his hand there was a hand on my shoulder. And I could see in my mind that he had taken me into this room, and across from me was a mirror, but there was no reflection coming back. And everything was very sterile and plain. And I could see to my peripheral vision, through my peripheral vision, that there were individuals on each side of me. So I sat there, and they said, "We have chosen you to be our messenger. We know you can see us. We've been with you for a very long time, but now you're ready." And I said, "What the heck does that mean?"
That's not too ominous, right?
What does that mean? And they said, "Well, we've been with you for longer than you will remember, but we have some things that we need you to do for us. And all we need you to do is trust us." And I said, okay. I had no reason to believe that there was any negative entities at play here.
Right.
So I said, okay. They returned my hand, and I did have on my shoulder, I had a burn. I had a neurological and radiation burn on my shoulder from that, which was interesting. And then the last time that I had heard this man.
And for those of you listening, Jessica Blunt just told us she became a human Ouija board for an alien or multidimensional. You were the planchette. He had his hands on you, and he's connecting you that way. That's fascinating. Go ahead.
Yes, and I guess I should say to go back to your point about schizophrenia. I did go to a psychologist and have that ruled out because I questioned that myself. I thought, sure, I'm going literally crazy. So all of this has all been ruled out. But there was one other time, the last time that I've connected with this man. I was on a treadmill. I was at the gym. It was very innocent. I had headphones on. No, I was not channeling at all. So they come to me. And yeah. So this was a couple of years ago, the last time that I remember him. And he came to me and he said, "Can you still," and again, that very loud, "Can you still hear me?" was what he said. And I flipped my headphones off because I was, again, startled. It's so loud. It's louder than your thoughts. It is louder than sound. It is stereo. Like you said, with vibration, I really believe everything is frequency. And so I'm tuned in to that frequency. And so nobody was behind me, and so I put my headphones back on, and I'm going on this treadmill. And he said again, "Jessica, can you still hear me?" And I said, "Yes, but how? How can I hear you if you are in my head? You're not in my headphones." And he started to use all of this medical terminology, which I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to recall a lot of that. But what I did remember was that he said, "We are able to communicate to you through the ocular vessel." And those were the only two words that I could remember, that I ran to my car and wrote down so that I wouldn't forget. And I passed that along to the science team. I said, "Here you go." And they went, "Oh my gosh, that's incredible."
Right. So. Well, and what's interesting about that, we'll talk more about, but the ghost in the machine theory, that doctor that was seeing phenomena and then realized that it was a fan blowing the liquid on his eyes that was giving him this innate ability to see things, but he kind of dismissed it as, well, then that's the science of it. It was hallucinations or visual problems. We'll be back with more right after this. Time flies when you're having fun, and I'm having a great time tonight. I hope you are too, folks. Thanks for tuning in to the Paranormal 360. My guest, Jessica Blunt, is with us and talking about her story. We're obviously going to have Jessica back on and dig a little deeper, because there's so much more. And in the next 8 minutes, I don't feel we're going to be able to cover even 1/1,000,000th of what this story shows us. you're given these downloads, you're given this information, it's
Yeah.
telling you how they can communicate with you. You're talking to the doctors about it. They're realizing that there's something to this.
Mhm.
It's really powerful.
Yeah.
How does this continue to grow for you? Where do we find Jessica Blunt now in 2025?
So, you know, obviously this is not mainstream that you could just look up and figure out how do you live with something like this. So it's been a real learning curve for me. But I have learned that I have really powerful gifts that, and I now call them gifts because I recognize them to be that.
Mhm.
And so I can work with the quantum field, and I work with people to help heal ailments. I have that ability through some of my channeling that I do, that I can guide people into certain dimensions that they can connect with the healed parts of them.
Jessica, did you just hear that? The collective sound of 2 million listeners' eyes rolling at the same time.
Oh, yes,
Ooh,
that's what
sure.
it was.
Right.
Yes.
But I love that because, again, folks, this is so easy to dismiss until you're there, until you can be in her presence, see what she does, put it out there. Listen, prophets, the people throughout the Bible had the ability to heal, to change. There are different elements to these things that have always existed. And
Yeah.
it sounds fantastical. But of course, what we once considered magic is now called science. The things that they blended and created from roots and other knowledge of plants are now things that we take to get rid of headaches and deal with other maladies. So it's not so far removed. Try to remain open to this. And I wasn't trying to be dismissive of you,
No,
Jessica. I
no.
just know I can hear certain points when people are like, "Oh, this is where you lost me."
Yeah, yeah.
Don't
Well,
give into that. Listen.
I'm right there with you, but because I've had the people to verify that for me, I've had clients that have come back and it's just, you know, I've assisted in healing bones, kept them from surgeries. I've sped up recoveries from after surgeries. There's a lot of people that can release a lot of trauma. I work with a lot of people that have worked with trauma, and they're able to release a lot of that through a variety of ways. And so I work with the energy of the land. I work with the energy within the quantum field. And I can harness all of this as I open that channel. And I'm not saying it's me, but I am saying there is something that runs through me that I am able to harness the power of, to be able to utilize to help people in certain situations. Yeah.
Working with scientists, have you ever had them work with you in a way that they can measure energy from you while you're doing this healing modalities?
So they have, that's one of the things that the MUPAS device can record. There's a watch, and the watch can record the different environmental changes from when you have a paranormal experience, or if you have some environmental thing going on. And so right now, that's what we are doing. We're practicing working with a lot of that. However, I will say it does become a bit of an interference when I am trying to do certain things, to have a whole bunch of equipment there. So it is some trial and error, because it does take, certain frequency. It's all about frequency. It's all vibrational. And once we can get into that vibration, we can find what is blocked or what's keeping things broken or stuck or damaged. And we can go into that frequency and start breaking it up and releasing it and healing it and repairing it. Yeah.
Does that ever feel like a burden to you, in a sense that this ability comes through you and not everybody can do this? Not everybody has it. And maybe expectations sometimes are too high for what you can or cannot do?
I feel like there are times that I wonder why I was chosen for this. And there's times that it does become frustrating. And, my family I didn't ask for it either. I mean, I didn't ask for any of this. But I also have to trust that there's a part of my existence that I was predetermined to do this. And So there's a lot of things that I do that trust me, I am literally the first person to question if I'm supposed to do this. And I really think about it, and I really make sure that it feels right. I've learned over the years that if I don't trust my gut, then things go south. And so if I'm led to do something, then I have to do it. And that goes for reaching. Sometimes I reach out to people that don't know me, and I'm like, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I'm not here to try to convince you of anything. I just want to offer you this because something that you are is reaching out to me, and I need that I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I couldn't help somebody that was
Right.
in their higher state or their subconsciousness reaching out to me. And that higher state, that's where I had my own abduction experience. That's where everybody has this, which, by the way, I will say, that was verified on the MUPAS device. My abduction experience was corroborated.
But what, Dave? She's been abducted and we haven't even talked about that? I told you, folks. Sometimes you have to take a sip from the water fountain before I turn on the fire hose with the rest of the information. I do want to have you back. We'll discuss that too. But let me ask you this, Jessica. Very, very little time left, about 30 seconds here. Have any of the people that you've worked with and helped heal, has that opened up for them abilities?
It's been life-changing for them. Absolutely. Every single one of them.
That's phenomenal.
Every single one of them. And it's changed their life in a way that they have wanted to learn more at themselves. And so, in fact, this summer, I'm teaching some elemental shamanism to some folks that have had some profound effects as well. But it is literally life-changing for people to have an experience like this. So.
JessicaBlunt.com. That's JessicaBlunt.com. Find more information about our guest there. We will have her back, I promise, in the future to discuss this and so much more. Jessica reminds us that sometimes the most powerful truths come from the quiet places between science and spirit, between logic and the unseen. Whether it's the quantum mechanics behind her MUPAS encounters or the deeply personal work of spiritual healing, her journey is one that blurs the boundary. And if tonight sparked something in you, maybe it's time to carry your light a little further. Stay curious, stay brave, and remember, Paranormal 360 is where every angle reveals a little more of the mystery. Every Sunday, 7 to 9 p.m. Central, live right here. Well, I hope you enjoyed this presentation as much as I did rewatching it and engaging. This Wednesday, we will follow up with Jessica Blunt right here on the Paranormal 60. It's a brand new episode, and we're going to go into different elements that we just touched on tonight. We're going to talk about her alien abduction. We're going to talk about creature encounters, ghostly sightings, and more. And thank you all for spending some time here with me, allowing me to share this episode with you, and allowing me to introduce you to a new friend, somebody that I feel will be a part of our show many different times forward. As a matter of fact, we've already discussed that next, after this Wednesday, we'll have her back again in a couple of months. I want to talk about her channeling, her automatic writing, since I did have an experience with that, and what it's like to actually be open to something that profound and have it come through you. Are you chosen, or do you choose this life? We'll discuss that and more. Thank you all for tuning in, and I will see you here Wednesday with a brand new episode of the Paranormal 60.